stage. So that was interesting, lots of writing, lots of sitting down. But I found that I quite enjoyed it, so it wasn't a bad experience. But it was also a good flavour of managing large research projects as well. Ultimately, the work that we developed during this was noted by the World Economic Forum, who in 2016 named me as one of their young scientists. That's scientists under the age of 40 who are developing stuff that could be very useful or have a big impact on society. Because the lasers we were developing ultimately able to be used to monitor things like deforestation or developing novel laser systems. This time it was for attosecond science and ultrafast science. I was there for about a year, and it was in that year that I was really starting to question whether I wanted to stay in academia. Oh wait, you just have to listen to me. So ultimately, I made the decision that I wasn't really happy in the kind of role that I was in as a kind of academic research scientist. So I decided to see what other opportunities were out there. One of them was to apply for a Marie Curie fellowship, which I decided to do at a neighbouring research institute, also in Berlin. And the other thing that was very strange, and actually this is a good point about networking, I had met my now boss at M2 previously at a conference, I think, and we'd had a collaboration with him when I was at Imperial. And he just so happened to email me once to say, hey, I'm in Berlin, do you want to meet for lunch? So we met for lunch, and I thought, okay, this is really nice. I showed him the lab, showed him all the laser systems we're working on, and we'll have a nice lunch and just a chat and catch up. And at the end of the lunch, he said, so we're thinking about expanding our innovation activities in Germany. Do you want a job? And I was like, oh, that's kind of strange. Well, I'm waiting to hear about the Marie Curie fellowship, so I don't know if I want to do that, but actually what he's describing sounds kind of fun. So I thought I'd try it out, because I never knew if I didn't know if I was going to get the Marie Curie fellowship or not. And so it was like a risk mitigation strategy to try out, see what it's like to work in industry. So I started this at the beginning of 2018. And it just so happened that at the same time I found out that I was awarded the Marie Curie Fellowship. So I had this kind of weird choice. But I was kind of enjoying working for M2 at the time, so I was thinking, is this going to be a long-term thing that I'm going to still find it really fun in a year's time? And what's really, really awesome about the Marie Curie scheme is that after you sign a contract, you can delay starting it for up to a year, I believe. So I decided to do that, to try out how it was working out with M2. And ultimately, I decided I love my job, and I will not take up the Marie Curie Fellowship. I'm still very happy with my choice. I do have some kind of regrets. I really liked the projects that I had come up with for Marie Curie, but ultimately, I really enjoy what I'm doing. So, yeah, that's it. Initially, I was working for them as a consultant on a freelance basis, which if you have questions about that later, I'm happy to answer. But now, in 2019, I became permanent with them as the Innovation Ambassador. So during my career, I've developed a number of different skills, technical skills, soft skills, if you'd like to call them that. So obviously, background in lasers and nonlinear optics. But then, there's all of these other things that kind of come with not just an academic career, but other careers as well. So project management is a really good one. I'm still learning. There's a number of different project management skills that you can learn. Supervision and mentoring. I'd say that's very important in an academic career, but also in industry now. If you have new people starting, to kind of mentor them through, see what kind of works for them, see if they're in the right role, these sorts of things. And then the really big one is communication, and that is across any career path that you go into. Communication skills are key. So my job now, my job is to build innovation networks mostly in Europe. I also come up with new project ideas and collaborations that we can have with scientists. And then I have to write the grant proposals, and this takes up most of my time. I would say probably more than 50% of my time I spend writing grant proposals. The other stuff is the more businessy stuff, so coordinating the expansion of the M2's German subsidiary. And this involves a wide range of business development activities. But I work remotely, I work alone at home, and this is hard. And I found that I'm quite a big people person. I like to talk to people. because when I start to get lonely, this is the kind of thing that I start to do. So he's my only colleague at the moment. So, in January this year, I decided he was deserving of Employee of the Month, which probably tells you quite bad things about me, because there's just the two of us there, and he beat me to Employee of the Month, so a bit strange. And I realised doing stuff like this is probably a good sign that I should go out and meet people a little bit more often. So now I aim to try and see people on a weekly basis, kind of make appointments to see potential collaborators regularly, so I get out of the house. So, now a little bit about M-Squared. I'll go through this really quickly, but you can talk to me later if you have any questions about the technology that we do. We generate the world's most purest and precise sources of light. These are lasers, which I'm talking about lasers. Our mission is to basically use light-based technologies for good to help to solve some of society's biggest problems. And I've really bought into this idea. I really like the idea of all these laser systems or light-based technologies being used to do something good for mankind. So M-Squared, they were founded in 2006. And since then, we've kind of grown, especially in the last 5 years, very rapidly. I think we're sort of approximately doubling in size in terms of people and revenue almost every 2 years, which is extremely quick. But now we have loads of different academic partners, or not just academic, industry partners as well, globally, more than 80. We're now active in more than 30 countries across the world. And we have more than 120 employees now across 3 continents. So, growing very rapidly, needing lots of people to come and work with us. But yeah, it's fun. It's a fun journey. So our laser systems, we aim to generate laser systems for our customers that can, as best as possible, solve their problems. And so the best way of describing this is to talk about, I guess, one of our premier products, which is our Solstice laser system. Solstice is a titanium sapphire laser. Titanium sapphire lasers are probably the most flexible laser in the world. They can generate wavelengths between about 650 to 1100 nanometers, and our Solstice system can pretty much be tuned across almost that entire range. But what is really cool about Solstice is that it's a modular product. So you start off with a titanium sapphire laser by itself, and then you can add a number of different modules, which are frequency mixing modules based on nonlinear processes. And using these, you can build up an entire system that can cover from about 210 nanometers all the way up to 4 microns. And so this is extremely wide wavelength range for a laser to be targeting. And one of my favorite stories actually about our products in use was the Sentinel-5P satellite, which was launched a couple of years ago, I think, by the European Space Agency. And they had a Trocomi instrument on board, which is formed of 4 spectrometers. And they had some issues basically calibrating the spectrometers because the wavelength range was so wide. And I believe there are no calibration tools in space that are able to calibrate across such a wide wavelength range, apart from our laser. So they got wind of our laser and they said, hey, we need a laser source to calibrate our spectrometers. Can you do it? And we're like, yeah, sure, we can do that. And they're like, can you do that like now? So it was quite a short, because as you can imagine, space missions take a really long time. And so it was a short time frame to be able to get everything ready and to go and install it at their site in the Netherlands. But we managed it. So this, you can see here the Solstice platform has been installed at the European Space Agency site in clean room conditions. And it did go on to successfully calibrate the spectrometers. And then I think it was 2018 that Sentinel-5P, no, yeah, 2018 that Sentinel-5P was launched. And it's gone on to generate some of mankind's best data on the planet about atmospheric gases. So this shows you here about nitrogen dioxide over Europe, but it can also show you other kind of greenhouse gases. So it's been extremely powerful, and it's kind of a source of pride to have been involved with this. So we also are heavily involved in innovation activities. And the three core themes of what we're doing in our innovation team are in quantum technology, chemical sensing, and biophotonics. So I work with the innovation team, and what I mean by innovation team is the innovation activities is R&D type stuff, so cutting edge research that we are taking out of the lab and trying to turn it into something that's useful in real life. So I'll give you just a few quick examples of each of these themes. The first is quantum technology. We've been heavily involved in the UK and Europe in all of the kind of quantum efforts that are going on. As part of one of the UK quantum hubs, we developed a cold atom chamber in our commercial environment. Now, cold atom chamber, basically this is a magneto-optical trap, so using lasers to trap and cool atoms to near absolute zero, in our case rubidium atoms. And so we were able to do that. So cold atoms in this environment are able to be used to do very precision sensing measurements. And so this was kind of the ethos behind it. So working with the University of Birmingham, we ended up doing this and turning it into something that could be portable and demonstrated not in a lab, for example, in the Houses of Parliament in the UK. And then we weren't satisfied with this, so we turned it into something a little bit more exciting, which is a quantum gravimeter. Now, a gravimeter can measure very small changes in acceleration due to gravity using just cold atoms. So we're very proud of this first ever commercial quantum gravimeter in the UK. At the moment, I think it can measure changes in acceleration due to gravity of around 10 to the minus 6. And this can allow you to detect, for example, mineral deposits in the ground. With that high precision, you can measure things like, on a construction site, whether you're going to drill into some deep kind of buried tube or something, or some kind of pipeline. But yeah, it could potentially be very useful. Now, another one of my really favourite stories about our products in use is in the sensing department. So, using lasers in this case, spectroscopy. So, the whiskey industry is extremely important in Scotland, and being a Scottish company, we feel like we should probably be doing something to support that industry. So we developed a system that is able to optically fingerprint whiskey. So you can tell the difference between different brands. And as you can see here, it's very, very clear, very distinguished. But not only different brands, within the same brand, different ages. So the maturation age of the whiskey is a sign of, the longer it's matured, the more expensive the whiskey, the higher quality the whiskey. And so for the industry, people are selling in the fancy bottle, maybe a slightly cheaper one, or a whiskey that hasn't been matured as long, and therefore they're taking the extra money for themselves. But not only the age, also the different cask that it's been matured in. So this is really, really cool. Because the whiskey industry was losing money from this counterfeiting, so putting the cheap whiskey in expensive bottles and then pocketing the money themselves. So the whiskey companies, the distillers, could go with our device and go measure the whiskey to see if it's the right one. So I really like that. And so the last thing is M2 Life, which is biophotonic stuff. We have developed a light sheet microscope, and the idea of the light sheet microscope is that you're able to image larger specimens than, for example, confocal microscopes. This I really like here, you can see a zebrafish. This zebrafish has been, this is 3 stacked Z images, and you're able to see the entire zebrafish. So the light sheet microscope, you are able to image much larger specimens. But typically you would have to choose between large field of view or high resolution. But what is interesting about our microscope, is that we use an area beam to illuminate rather than a Gaussian beam. And that allows us to have simultaneous large field of view and high resolution. So not only can you image very large specimens like this, you can also image very, very small details within the specimen, with like these neurons in a mouse brain. So it gives you the very, very small detail, as well as zooming out to see larger neural networks in the specimen. So this is an extremely powerful tool. But what I'd like to say about all of these things, the innovation activities that we've done, is that I'm not an expert in any of these things, but I have to write grant proposals about all of them. So It's a bit of an uncomfortable position to be in. Now, this leads nicely onto the university skills for jobs. So first of all, there's loads of different types of roles, loads of different types of employers. I think the academic roles are a little bit more easy to kind of understand, especially if you're coming through a PhD. But it's not just research roles, there's also management roles. In industry, you have the full range of the size of the different companies that you would work for, from a startup where you have a lot of responsibility, to larger corporations where there's a lot better structure and kind of the processes that you go through are very well established. Or then there's something in between, which is the SME, like M2. And in these roles, you can be a scientist, engineer, go into management, go into sales, or do a little bit of everything like me. And then sort of the more less kind of standard roles that we might think about, it's like in publishing, or in working for political bodies like the European Union. And it's great that we'll have some insight from the National Contact Point for Horizon 2020 here as well. But what I found is useful for all of these roles and all of these employers are these kind of quick summary of the different skills that I've found. So I've already said about communication, it's extremely important. You need to be able to tell your boss what you're doing. You need to be able to tell your colleagues what you're doing, apart from members of your team. And for publicly funded research, you also need to tell the public what you're doing. Willingness to learn is a really big thing, and this links back to what I was saying with our innovation activities and the fact that I just don't know really very much detail about quantum or chemical sensing or biophotonics. You need to be able to learn. And that's the case for any role that you go into, because you're not going to be an expert in, for example, a company's products when you first start working for them, so you need to be able to learn how they work. Creativity also really helps, especially when you're writing grant proposals. Sometimes you've got no idea where to start, so you just write something that sounds nice. As soon as you start writing, it triggers you to kind of carry on. A pretty big one is recognizing opportunities and taking chances. I don't like to say taking risks because it has a very negative connotation, but I would turn that risk into a chance. See what's out there, just try things, because by trying things you learn a little bit better about what you want to do. And then the ability to find solutions. So problems come up, and quite often the first thought is to get a bit anxious about it. But just take a deep breath, try and figure out all the different possible solutions. Just Google. Google's really helpful. Then career resources. So the Optical Society has this work in optics.com. This is a great place to find optics-related jobs. Right Recruits from the Institute of Physics in the UK is a little more about physics. The European Commission, you find jobs all across Europe, fancy changing countries, very, very useful. And the final one I want to say is Glassdoor. Glassdoor's awesome, because you can find different job roles, different countries, different cities. You can read about different companies, but also, if you're changing jobs, you've got no idea what salaries you can expect. And Glassdoor can give you like a full spectrum of the kind of salaries that you can expect working in a particular role, in a particular country, in a particular city. So it's very, very useful. Again, back to the OSA. The Sigma School gives you loads of different insight across applications of lasers. Next year it's going to be in Warsaw, so it's not too far to go. The Innovation School, if you think that you've got an idea and you want to turn it into some kind of product or something you can sell, some service you can sell, the Innovation School is like a boot camp for learning the different skills that you need to do that. The OSA Career Collaborator is a new thing that was launched maybe last year or so. There's a number of different videos that basically take you through different aspects of thinking about career choices. And in fact, at the Student Leadership Conference last week, the OSA ambassadors were videoed, so maybe you'll see Maria and myself. Sorry for that in advance. And then again, in the broader, I recommend getting involved in the technical groups because you learn a whole bunch of different skills from them. Look for the scholarships and fellowships and awards that you can apply for. Somebody has to win them, so why not just try applying for them? And then the ambassador program. So here we are with Donna Strickland.
With Donna.
So, use us. We want to share stuff with you. So find out who we are, what kind of skills we've developed, what we can offer, contact us. We're always happy to hear from you. And also, once you've finished with your degree, apply for the scheme. We need more people. We need people like you, engaged people. So I'll end on kind of advice. Take it if you want or not. I don't mind. You have to figure out what is right for you. The top one is that the decisions you make when you're starting your career, you don't have to stick with them for the rest of your life. You can change. You can change between industry and academia like I've done. I think it's easier to do that the earlier in your career that you are, because it's easier to go back to academia if you find it's not quite right for you in industry. But yeah, you don't have to be sticking in the same job for the rest of your life. You can change your mind. Ask advice from as many different people, from as many different job roles as you possibly can. But bear in mind, people have quite a lot of their own motivations for giving advice. If someone's been in the same career path their entire life, they're going to say, oh, it's much better if you do this, maybe. I find that people can be very polarizing in terms of their opinions about what you should be doing. At the end of the day, it's your career. You have to choose what's right for you. Take chances on those opportunities. Find out what's out there. Try stuff. It's fun. You learn a lot. And the last thing, roles aren't always advertised outside of academia and governmental organisations. So find somebody in your network, do the networking, find people at companies, send them an email, say, hey, are there opportunities for you guys right now? Because they probably are. We don't really advertise everything, so contact me, ask me. So my final thought, and then I'll leave you all in peace, is basically a quote from Pablo Neruda. Laughter is the language of the soul. So why am I saying this? The reason for that is we spend so much of our life working that if you're not really happy, if you're not having fun with what you're doing, it can be really, really miserable and depressing. So do stuff that makes you happy. So with that, I will say thank you for listening.
Thank you, Gabriel. We will leave the questions to the round table at the end. So now it's a pleasure to introduce Cristina Garcia Rodriguez. She is the national contact point for the Maritime program, the European program, and she is also the project manager of the European office of the Spanish National Foundation for Science and Technology. Just a brief introduction of her. She got her degree in biology and a master in biotechnology focused on business at the Alice International Business School in Madrid. And she has been a project manager in different companies and also in the Spanish Foundation for Science and Technology. And she has worked there as a European project. So for those thinking about the Marie Curie writing proposal and stuff, take her contact because it's a good one. So we'll be talking about the different programs, I guess, European community has and all the useful stuff on European projects. So thank you. You're welcome.
Pues empieza esta como... Claro.
Hello, good morning everybody, thank you for being here. Thank you for inviting me overall. It was quite surprising and talking about after Gabriel is like crazy. I don't have that experience, so I think I'm a little bit embarrassed. So, I'm Cristina Gracia, I work as the National Contact Point for Marie Curie Actions, and in fact, if you're thinking about writing a proposal for Marie Curie program, you need to contact us. You need some help. I mean, your science is perfect, you know how to write your science, but writing a proposal for a European program is difficult and it's different. It's not writing a paper. So some advices we can give you. And I work for the Spanish Foundation for Science and Technology. We do a lot of things. We are more than 100 people working in different things and providing different services to the ministry and to the society. So I brought some promotional material so you know what we do. And I'm not going to spend much time with that. I'm going to talk to you about some resources that might be useful for you. Okay? This is quite a career path for researchers. university, master's, PhD, doctorate degree. So, how many of you are PhD students? Not students. You are researchers, okay?
Yeah.
At European level, you cannot be considered student. That's it. Who are you? Are postdoctoral researchers? Okay, thank you. Postdoctoral researchers? Great. How many of you would like to follow this career path towards a consolidation in academia?
Maybe.
Okay. And who of you think are enough positions for all of you in academia?
Yeah,
Okay, so maybe we should start thinking about some changes, but there are opportunities, of course. Marie Curie is an opportunity, it's tough. It's a 14% average of success, but it's an opportunity. Just try it. Let's see, what we have in the UK. We have this study from 2014 where they say that only 0.40 of the people who pursue a scientific career ends up with a consolidation as a professor at university. Good news is that that figure has a mistake. It's not that 0.4 is a 3.5, and the 3.5 that is for permanent research staff is about 10%. So that's UK. UK is the oldest research and development system in Europe. They have a long tradition, they have a lot of funding because there are different actors, public, private, charities, 10%. Okay? What happens in USA? We have this study from 2016. Only less than 8% of PhD students get a faculty staff member. 8%. Do you think in Spain is more or less the same? What do you think about it?
less.
Okay, we don't have that studies, but I can show you, for example, this. The post in the ministry, you know, it's FPU, FPI for doctoral contracts, then Juan de la Cierva Formación, Juan de la Cierva Incorporación, and then Ramón y Cajal. Can you see the numbers? Have you ever checked them?
Yes.
Just for the Ministry of Science, 1,100 doctoral contracts, 225 Juan de la Cierva Formación, 225, 200 Ramón y Cajal. Just get your conclusions about it. Is it that we don't want doctors? Do you think the state should increase the number of positions they throw for researchers? What do you think is the strategy from the government for those cycles? Nobody? Well, I give you my personal opinion. My personal opinion is that we want very trained professionals, but we want them in industry, in public administration, as teachers, at high schools, because you have to train researchers from the very start of their education. So try to think that maybe your happier life is in other sectors. Okay? Just a reflection there. So what can I do? Only 200 Ramón y Cajal.
No.
Maybe going out of Spain, maybe working in industry, maybe going to the gym as a yoga trainer. I've heard that from a PhD student just last week.
What, the yoga monitors?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So I'm going to talk to you about some resources. How many of you have heard about Euraccess? Okay. What is Euraccess? Please, a definition, fast, something, description.
This is a portal where you can find a lot of information on job opportunities in Europe, also networking opportunities and career path things.
Okay, so it's a service for researchers.
Hmm.
It's a pan-European initiative from the European Commission. Okay.
That definition is better than mine.
Yeah, sounds
Yeah.
great. That doesn't stay. So, for me, it's two things. It's a network of professionals research and development managers who are willing to help researchers to move from one country to another and to provide them with information about career development and research. Okay? And it's another thing, it's a website with a lot of information. We have, as I told, we are more than 40 countries, I think, and we have the European webpage, and then every country has their webpage. We have different services here, okay? So you have, let's start with the login and register. You only need your name and an email address. You don't need anything else to register. And it's quite useful because you can use it as a partnering tool. You can see partnering there. You can look for other researchers in your area, and you will be visible for employees. So you can also upload your CV. Okay? Also useful is that you can set up alarms in the jobs and funding opportunities search engine. I will talk about that later. We also have Your Access Worldwide. At the beginning, Your Access was a platform to attract researchers to come to Europe and to help researchers moving in Europe. Okay? Because obviously 20 years ago it was not the same, researching in Spain, researching in UK, researching wherever. So Your Access Worldwide is now like a satellite, and there are people working in different parts of the world, in US, in Latin America, in Korea, in China, and their main objective is to bring researchers to Europe, but also to network, to promote the networking between European researchers abroad. So they are a very nice contact if you are willing to know, what are they doing in Japan? Maybe it's an opportunity for me. You can contact them. Okay? What else? Information and assistance, that is the information that a researcher will need if moving to another country. Visas, schooling, how to rent a flat, etc. You can find the information in the website, or you can contact a manager in the institution you are going to if they are your access center. If they are not, then you can find somebody closer who can support you in this task. And career development. You will find there a lot of resources about career development. You will find self-assessment tools. You will find success stories of researchers working outside of academia. You will find definitions of roles with the skills like I am a researcher and now I'm working in press or communicating science or I work in this industry, and the profile, the skills you need for those kind of positions. And jobs and funding. Jobs and funding, as I said, is a portal where institutions would announce their offers. It's compulsory for every Horizon 2020 beneficiary to announce their posts there. So you will find offers there. You can find also funding offers, that is, for example, in Spain, we publish general information about Ramón when they are published, etc. So this is general information about programs. And then you have hosting offers. Hosting offers are institutions who are willing to receive researchers to apply, for example, for a Marie Curie. So they post a hosting offer saying, I'm looking for a researcher to apply for a Marie Curie for something related with license, for example. And you can contact them. And in this search engine, you can set up your alarms. You make one search. I want postdoctoral positions in Italy in lasers. And if you set up an alarm and you have your account, remember with your name and email, you will receive every offer according to those requirements you set up. Here in Spain, we are more than 100 centers. A month ago, there were more than 700 job positions offered. And you can say that in engineering is the most popular sector here in Spain for research. You can see that is search for jobs. You can select the research field, researcher profile, that means R1, 2, 3, 4. Have you ever heard that? Do you know what R1, 2, 3, and 4 is? Okay, that's European words. R1 is predoctoral, and you can imagine what is the rest. So it's a bit different. You have to start filling being familiarized with these words, European words. You can select the sector, the country, and even the European research program, which is very interesting. I will talk about it later. So, as I told you, we have national portals. This is the Euraccess Spain national portal. The HIP, we are the national coordinators for Euraccess Spain. And we have this section, which is Science in Spain. Science in Spain is a very new section that, in fact, started because Spanish researchers abroad felt quite, they didn't feel linked to Spain, they didn't know about our system because they were outside, and they wanted to know where they could learn about how our system worked. So we started preparing this Science in Spain, and suddenly we realized that even researchers here, like you, didn't know about this information of Spanish research system. So it happens to be very useful for everybody. We have information about the researcher career path. Is the paper you have. You have a compilation of all the public calls for predoctoral, postdoctoral, and consolidation of research. We have information about the 8 public research organizations in Spain. We have information about the centers of excellence, and also about Marie Curie Coupan. The career path, I have already told you something about it. Let's see. We have European opportunities at the top of the map. You can see Marie Curie and the ERC, obviously the most known, also the most difficult. So maybe you have to start looking for other opportunities in public, private foundation, and other organizations like Gabriel said, like EVO, etc. National calls, you have from the Ministry of Science, as we said, FBU, Ley, Juan de la Sierra, Ramón Cajal. For health science, we have Sara Borrell, Miguel Servet. At universities, we have the FBU, and then there's another very good program, just they only had one call in 2018, and 2019 is present at a political level, so they haven't launched this call, but they will. It's Beatriz Galindo. Have you heard about it? Okay, it's postdoctoral opportunities for researchers at public universities in Spain. And there are 2 categories, junior and senior. Junior, you must have less than 7 years of experience abroad. And senior, you need to have more than 7 years abroad. I think it's a very good initiative. But again, pre-doctoral grants are 850, and Beatriz Galindo were 100. So, regional calls. These are also very interesting. Have you checked these regional calls from Fundación Malvinas-D, Fundación Seneca, Ikerbasque? They are a bit more difficult to be tracked because they are not published every year. They don't always have funds. But it's very interesting to be aware of that. You can see blue is the predoctoral stage, almost every region funded. You can see what happens later. Interesting, here we have Ikerbasque, ICREA in Catalonia, and Malvinas-D. Interesting because they do publish a call every year. So you should have them in your mind when looking for positions. And even opportunities in the private sector. You can look for some special programs like the Stream is for companies in Catalonia for incorporating postdoctoral researchers. You have also Torres Quevedo from the ministry, and even some regional governments would fund this incorporation of researchers in industry. As I said, there are 8 public research organizations. They are the basic 4. The best chance for researchers there is to get a position as a civil servant, but that is quite difficult. So you can get positions applying to a Marie Curie or to any other grant. You can get a position through the own funding of the groups, and even through some private foundations would fund projects in this center. Who know the centers and units of excellence? María de Maeztu and Soberochoa. Yes? Raise your hands, please. Okay, it's crucial for you to know that this exists because the ministry is selecting the most recognized centers in Spain for high quality, for interesting strategic plans and research, and they are funding with a lot of money, almost a million euros per year, and it's to be invested in their strategic plans, which usually include hiring. So they have a lot of offers. It's very interesting that you are aware of which of these centers and units are within your area of research. They have their own websites with their job section. And also interesting because, for example, do you know this grant, Junior Leader from La Caixa? As you know, La Caixa is a bank. Their foundation, they grant a lot of researchers for projects, for contracts. And in their last call, this Junior Leader, they are only funding researchers who are going to these centers and units of excellence. And here, it is a perfect match for the second part of my speech because this program is co-funded by Marie Curie Actions. So now I start talking about European opportunities, Marie Curie and ERC. But I'm going to read a little bit first. Are you familiar with Horizon 2020? Yes. How many of you know about this structure of 3 pillars? Good. How many of you know what are the opportunities for researchers? Can you tell me what of them? What programs are for funding researchers?
There are several, right? Since the basic Marie Curie programs up to some industry development programs or...
That is the first point. When I talk about Horizon 2020, many researchers say that is Marie Curie and ERC. No, there is much more, and you can apply for collaborative projects in other programs. It's true that contracts are only in Marie Curie and in ERC. Okay? How many of you think that first step is Marie Curie and then ERC? It goes that way.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, it's not mandatory, but it's like the natural path, right?
Could be.
Could be.
But if you look to the requirements for Marie Curie, it's not.
Yeah.
So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about Marie Curie, and most of all, I'm going to try to compare it to ERC. So Marie Curie is training for researchers along all their life, meaning there is a program to fund postdoctoral, and in postdoctoral, there is no range of ages when you can apply for Marie Curie. It's from the moment you get your PhD until you retire. Okay? It's training with triple I mobility, international, that's crucial in Marie Curie, intersectorial, and inter what? Inter something else. Strong industry participation, level 3, and also very important to acquire new skills, both in research and other soft skills. Okay? As I told you, there are different programs. ITM is a doctoral. IED, you probably know them, postdoctoral. RISE, Research and Innovation Staff Exchange, is also a network of institutions working together with a single focus in research. But what the European Commission funds is the exchange personnel, so you can go visit your partners, whatever, and stay there for up to 6 months, I think. And it's quite interesting, but you need to be permanent staff of the institution to participate. And then COFAN. Have you heard about COFAN programs? Okay, it's a program from Marie Curie where they fund the institution to strengthen or to launch new recruitment processes. So this program from La Caixa is co-funded by the European Commission as a fund program. Why is it very interesting? Because it is postdoctoral opportunities for you. So it's interesting for you to know which institutions have a fund program. At your Access Spain, in Science in Spain, we have this section of co-fund programs ongoing in Spain. We have quite a lot, with a lot of opportunities. The thing is that we're talking about Marie Curie, and I told you that it was crucial to international mobility. So for you here, probably co-fund programs in Spain are not an option, but you can learn what other co-fund programs are there in Europe. How can you do it? Your Access portal. Okay, you select the profile of the doctoral researchers, and the European Research Program, you can select co-fund programs, and you will find out what co-fund programs are there. I found this quite interesting. It's only for women in research. They launched their first call. I think they are almost closing it. Maybe, I think it was 29. But they are launching a second call at the beginning of next year. So if you're interested in the University of Vienna, it can be an option. Individual fellowships. You have prepared a grant.
Yeah.
You have prepared a grant.
No sé, one.
Somebody else? But have you heard about individual fellowships? Great.
Yeah.
There are different panels with different conditions, but it's a grant for a project of 2 to 3 years, depending on the panel. The European Commission will fund your salary complete. So it's great to approach somebody in another institution. Hey, would you like to apply for an IELTS with me? The European Commission will pay everything. Quite a good offer. And remember, it is training. So you have to prepare a research project, but also a learning project. What are you going to learn in research, in some other soft skills, if you're going to go to the industry, and also, very important, you can apply for an IELTS in the industry. So if you can, and if they are beneficiaries every year going to the industry, it's because there are companies hiring researchers. So look for them, try to follow who have hired a Marie Curie individual fellow, and you will find companies willing to hire researchers. On Mayeli, you go well. Are you an experienced researcher? Do you have your PhD or 4 years of experience in research? This second chance is going to change. So in Horizon Europe from the 21st, they are going to change that. And you will need to have your PhD finished to apply for an individual fellowship. The mobility rule, as I told you, is very important. You have to move to another country over some months, etc. And the nationality restrictions, there are 2 panels in which they have, if there is a restriction for European researchers only. 2 main panels, European fellowships, to move within Europe, global fellowship, to go to a country outside of Europe and then come back to a European country. It's absolutely compulsory to come back for a year to a European country. So you will have a very good experience outside, and you are gaining 1 year of contract in a European country. These are the panels, different conditions. I think I'm not going to spend more time here. If you have any doubt, just contact me. Widening fellowship it's not a different panel, it's just that for those researchers going to one of these widening countries like Poland, or you have a list there, they have like a second chance to be funded. If in IELTS they don't get funding, these countries have an additional budget to fund these grants. So last year there were, I think, 24 grants, 24 fellows who didn't get funding from Marie Curie, but get it through this budget. Success rates, average 14%. This was the age. That's interesting because the first column is without the PhD, The second column is between 0 and 2 years, I think, after your PhD. You know, that is when most of researchers apply for a Marie Curie individual fellowships. But in orange, you have which are the more funded. So you can see that the success rate in different phases, the more funded are within, I think it's 2 and 7 years after the PhD. ERC. Well, there are great differences between Marie Curie and ERC. ERC, they do restrict the age of the researcher. So you need for starting, you need to have between 2 and 7 years after your PhD, and so on for the rest of them. It's a lot of funding. It's for your own salary, but also for hiring other researchers and also for some materials. And the main difference is the research profile. For Marie Curie, you have to be creative. You have to be willing to learn. For ERC, you are a potential research leader. You need to have some important publications, while in Marie Curie is not so important. I mean, there is a lot of competition between researchers, and those with higher publications may have more opportunities, but it's not a key for Marie Curie. Research experience, keywords, groundbreaking, addressing important challenges, and issues, high risk, high gain. In Marie Curie was training. Yes, you have to do excellent science, you have to do an innovative project, but it's training mainly. You don't have to be a leader, high risk, high gain, etc. Groundbreaking. Fall calendar, July, October for starting grants. Every year in Marie Curie is September, from I think they open in May until September. Success rate more or less the same, and restrictions for future applications. If you don't get funded when you apply and get a very bad score, you will be restricted next year to present the application again. In Marie Curie, that does not happen. So you send it 1 year, you receive an evaluation summary report, you learn from your mistakes, and you apply again and again and again. And the success rate in different years increases. I mean, for the second recent meeting, it's like, I think it was 16% of success rate instead of 14. 8 of the ERC grantees. I told you that you can apply for an ERC after you have at least 2 years of postdoctoral experience, let's say. But of course, most researchers won't apply for an ERC until they are very close to those 7 years. And that's all. Well, great. Thank you.
Yeah, sit down, we're going to do the round table.
No, uno de nuestros espectadores quiere preguntarle. Uno de los espectadores quiere preguntarle.
So, thank you so much for both of you for your talks. I think that they were very interesting. And now we have a round table, so you can do any question that you want to do. And also we have the streaming. We are sorry for the problems that we had at the beginning with the link and the camera and everything, but I think that they are solved. And we have people in streaming, so they also can ask with the chat. So I don't know if you have any question, you can start or we start.
I have one.
Okay.
I will start asking Gabriel, but maybe it's a question for both of them. When you're doing your PhD, or at least for me when I was doing my PhD, for me it was either industry or either academia. It seemed like there was a Chinese wall between them, and so you couldn't cross. But now I think things are changing, and it's like there is this general idea that it's easy to go back or to go from academia to industry and go back, and there are different opportunities. For Gabriel, I would like to know when you step out from Imperial to industry, did you think that was like, okay, I'm leaving my academic career, never go back, although you came back? Or you had the idea that, okay, it might be, it would be a two ways career jump also? And in the case of Christina, I would like to know if there is some interconnection between these funding programs for industry, because typically you're doing your classic postdoctoral or doctoral career, and you only think in your academic, I mean the fellowships you can apply, right, like a Marie Curie or whatever, and only apply for an industry fellowship when you have like a position and you want to launch a startup or something. So it's like they're more applied fellowships than the academic ones. And but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know if that's the reality on this program. So that's my proposal.
So, I guess I can start. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, it's a really good question. I think you're right, things are changing, and I think that there are more companies that are doing R&D type activities, so the line is definitely getting blurred between industry and academia. For me, I think what was easy for me to transition, first of all, to work for a startup was that it really wasn't that much different from what I was doing during my PhD. What it was miniaturizing things and putting things into a box. I think that's the big benefit of working for a startup is that, the company is learning with you. Then I think, as I said previously, going between industry and academia, especially going from industry back to academia, is easier the earlier in your career it is. Because the more years you have under your belt in industry, the further you are away from potentially very leading groundbreaking science. So an employer could look at you and see that, say you have 10 years working in industry, have you kept in touch with what is, up and coming and new? Yeah. So I think from an employer's perspective, it would be harder for a university or a research institute to see somebody who's been in industry for a really long time. The other way, I think traditionally the view is that people that have been in academia a really long time, again, let's say 10 years, for an industry employer, they'll say, maybe that's too long. But this is where things are changing. I think that there's a lot more flexibility now, and I think there's a lot more appreciation in terms of the type of skills that you would bring to industry. So I think although there's a traditionally held view that somebody's been in academia a really long time is maybe not a great bet to come and work into industry, I think that is definitely training. And I think that is in part due to the more training aspect of schemes like the Marie Curie Fellowship, because there's such a wide range of skills that you can acquire.
I'd like to say that as I didn't start my PhD, so I'm not a researcher, so I haven't felt that fear to change, okay? But I think it's just fear. And aren't you afraid of staying in academia and being frustrated and never getting a good position? So just, you deserve taking that chance. Try the industry. And if you don't like it, you can go back. And maybe, like Gabriel, you find out that is what you like. You prefer the industry. At a political level, I have to say that, of course, things are changing. We have more and more industrial doctorates at every level, regional opportunities, national opportunities, European Commission. But the thing that from, I think it's 3 years now, the Marie Curie Fellowships, individual fellowship, has a specific panel for industry with their own budget that is not moved to any other panel. It's a very good thing, and it is clear that industry needs researchers and researchers need industry for a career development.
I have a question related with this because, for example, in academia, you need to publish a lot of papers and you have to be cited and you have to go to Congress. And I feel that if you move to industry, then it's really difficult to come back to academia. I don't know if it's only in Spain or also in other countries. What do you think about this?
So I think this goes back to what I was saying about the length of time that you're out of academia. Because yeah, if there's a big gap in your publication record if you've been in industry for a while, there could be big questions about that. But again, this goes back to the skills that you acquire. Because working in industry, you would acquire a range of skills that can be completely applicable to an academic career. For example, a lot of European funding likes to see that technologies get developed into, for example, a prototype or something during an academic funding call, for example. So that if you've been in industry for a few years, that's extremely valuable. So although papers and citations are still extremely important for an academic career, I think that times are changing and people are being a lot more open-minded about things. I'm not going to sit here and say that if you've been in industry for a really long time, it's going to be great on your CV, there's still going to be a gap, but it's about how you communicate your skills and the qualities that you bring to a job, and that goes for any kind of job.
Fellowship at the campus of Ciudades, who wants to go to some countries in Europe. And then she wanted to build her own startup in Spain, applying what she had learned. She came back to Spain, she built her startup, it started to grow, she had some people, and suddenly she realized that for the research and development she wanted to do, she needed huge investment, and she couldn't afford it from the startup. So she applied for another Marie Curie to go back to academia in another country, learn, and come back and build and strengthen her company here in Spain. So there are chances.
So I have a question for Cristina. If we are thinking to write an individual fellowship for Marie Curie, what is the thing we need to highlight in our report, in highlight in the application?
Okay, we always say that all of you are excellent researchers and your project is going to be great, maybe in science, but you need project management. You need a very clear Gantt diagram. So you need a project manager to help you with that. It's not that you can't do it, but we are always monitoring Gantt diagrams, so we know what is feasible, what is not, what is clear, what is not. So always look for the support from the management side. Also, in Marie Curie, as I can repeat it even more, but training is the key. So your project must be excellent science, but do not forget that it's a research and training project. So you have to build a diagram or a chronogram of courses, of additional skills, of visits to another labs, secondments, everything making sense, of course. It's not compulsory to make a secondment to another country. It has to make sense for your project.
As Rebecca said before, I think that mentoring is an important thing, and I would like to know in Spain the tutors that you have any program of mentoring.
Mentoring, you said?
Yeah, because sometimes I think the programs are important, but people don't help you in the way, and maybe you can ask or something, and the support is important.
Mentoring is like a hype now, and I would like this mentoring program everywhere for women, for young students, for physics, for whatever. But here we have our own mentoring program through your Access Institute. It's called Rebecca, Research Beyond Academia. And we are funding a program for 46 couples of pre-doctoral or early postdoctoral researchers to be coupled with professionals of science outside academia.
And well, it's a pilot, so it's just 6 months. But we are having a great feedback, so probably we will search funding under stones maybe to launch it again, because it's been a very good experience. Not only for us, because it's really fun, but also for researchers and for the mentors. They are enjoying all the program.
I just wanted to add to that. Yeah, there are mentoring schemes out there, but I find that if you see somebody who you feel that you have a good rapport with, somebody you can speak very freely with, just ask them their advice and they become your mentor. So I always felt like, I feel like uncomfortable maybe asking someone if they can give me advice on stuff, because maybe, they're not my PI, they're not my supervisor or anything, but generally people are really happy to help. So for example, changing into this industry role now, I always felt quite nervous not knowing the business aspect. And I happened to meet somebody from the OSA who, I was talking to him about this and saying, I feel like I need a mentor for this. And he's just like, well, I can help. So it's not just about finding the mentoring schemes. The mentoring schemes are great, don't get me wrong. Also, your NCP is your best friend. If you're applying for funding, make sure that you are very good friends with them. But just finding individual people who you think you have an open conversation with, that's also very helpful. And another thing that I wanted to say is that some of the other ambassadors and myself are talking about setting up an OSA ambassador mentoring scheme for students and early career professionals. So get in touch with us. So Maria and myself are a good place to start, and we can find somebody as well amongst the wider ambassador community who can potentially help.
Hi, thank you. So I'd like to ask if you think overqualification is an issue when moving from the academia into industry in Spain and also like abroad.
That's a great question, because I hear this quite a lot, especially you going into like an engineering role, having done a PhD and maybe a few years closer, are you somehow overqualified? Absolutely not. You bring a whole bunch of skills that for any employer is going to be awesome. You can use them in so many different ways, and yeah, so I would say don't think of yourself as being overqualified, because it's very valuable.
Yes, and I completely agree, and I would like to add that you are very qualified, but you are changing your role, you are changing to another world, and you need to learn, you need to study, you need to, thoroughly explain it.
Okay, we have two questions here in the streaming. Someone asked about other opportunities of grants in the industry in Spain, apart of Torres Quevedo, if there is anything else. I don't know.
In the career path, you can check that several regional governments have their own opportunities. Also, some private programs like Tecnosquim Promoción. Also, some private foundations that you should look for them, of course. They fund researchers in industry. And as I said, Marie Curie and ERC can be applied to the industry. So the career path, you can download it both from your access and from the field publications section.
Okay, and also ask about if there is any grant from Europe to stay in Spain, or all of them are to go abroad.
Marie Curie requests you to move to another country because you cannot have lived or worked in the country with which you are applying. But, for example, the Global Fellowship Scheme, you have to comply with that mobility rule, but in the third country. So you apply for a fellowship for 2 years in the US, for example, and 3rd year in Spain, and the rule says that you cannot have lived in the US for more than 3 years the last one. So you can apply to come back then to Spain.
Yes, hello. My question is more for Cristina. So as we all know, Brexit is probably happening in the next time. So my question was, if I were to apply for, say, a PhD or a postdoc in the UK, do we have any information at all what my work or legal status conditions would be regarding visas or work permits or
So
sort of
the,
that stuff?
Nobody
the
knows.
very quick answer is no. We don't know where the Brexit is going to happen. We don't know with what conditions. But we can say that the European Commission is working to design different scenarios and be able to react to any scenario that comes. And the British government is also working on that. Here you have the last version of their informative things about research in the UK. So, for example, they have assured that those researchers that have applied for a Marie Curie or any other grant in UK and are granted before the Brexit, even if they have submitted but they don't have a resolution after post-Brexit, the British government will fund it. But of course, it's uncertain. We don't know what is going to happen.
Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions?
I have one.
Oh, and I can tell you too that the Spanish Embassy in London, they are working very hard to make Spaniards there feel safe about their situation and to inform them about everything.
I got stuck with this idea of Marie Curie and starting grants because I really thought that it would be helpful if you want to apply for starting grant to have like a previous Marie Curie fellowship. So, but apparently it's not. So, what are the chances of getting a starting grant without having a competitive postdoctoral fellowship from the European Research Council? Or it has nothing to do, they're independent, it's not something that can give you plus points?
It's a difficult question, okay? You can, in the last, my last slide, you could see the age of the researchers applying for ERC and also the success rate. So, of course, as most of researchers who apply when they have 7 years of experience, the success rate in this age is higher. But there are researchers who are funded after 2 years of postdoctoral experience. The thing is, for Marie Curie, you won't get training because you have just finished your PhD, because you want to change your field of research, because in ERC you have to be you have to do something groundbreaking, and you can do that with 3 years of experience, or with 7, or with 10 years of experience. You need the idea to do something really different, and you will need to demonstrate that you are able to implement it.
I have a
Also, another reason why researchers would apply for ERC at the very end is because they get punished. If they don't get the funding and they get a very bad score, they won't be able to send it to them for the next year. So they play with that.
The penalization is only 1 year, or I mean?
They change from year to year. For example, the grades are A, B, and C. And the last time I checked it, it was if you get a C, you can't reapply for 2 years. And if you get a B, for 1 year. But this changes from court to court.
Okay. Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah.
I have a question for Gabriel. You need to write a grant proposal for different topics, different you need to have like different background. How come you have like a certain time to write a grant proposal? And the second question is, you miss something about academia because you are now in industry. You miss something?
So, so I spend some of my time checking all the different calls, either from the European Union, from the German funding schemes, from the British funding schemes, to try and see when deadlines are. That usually means that I have quite a lot of time, so I try and keep on top and try and keep organized. But it can be that maybe I've missed some calls or something because I don't know each individual field as well as somebody who's working in it. It can be that I missed something subtle, and then a week before the deadline, someone will say, hey, we want to apply for this.
can you write this proposal? And then that's a bit of a panic. But typically it's a time management problem where I just need to keep on top of when different calls are coming up. And the European Commission, for example, they will advertise when a call is coming up, when the call opens, and when the deadline is, with a number of months in advance of the deadline, which is helpful. So yeah, it's about, again, it's like finding the opportunities, so keeping yourself on top of your game to find when the opportunities are opening. And your second question, there's certain aspects that I miss about academia. I do miss playing with things in the lab, but I could do that in my job now once I've established things in Germany if I wanted to change back to it. I don't think I miss it enough to want to go and do it. The other thing I miss is when I go to conferences, having the luxury of going and sitting in on talks about stuff that I don't know anything about, to learn something new. I miss that aspect of it, because now the focus is on, when I go to conferences, the focus is on meeting people, maybe standing on the exhibition stand for a while, and sort of making the connections and new connections with people. So there's a part of me that does miss going to the talks at conferences. But on the whole, I would say I wouldn't go back.
What's the biggest difference writing proposals for academia and industry? Because the general idea is the same, right? You need to have a Gantt chart and the managing program and all those things. And I guess the main difference is the scientific idea or the business idea, right?
It totally depends on which scheme you're applying for as well. So from the European Union, there are certain schemes that are for the rapid commercialization of technologies that you've already developed your prototype, the prototype has been validated somewhere. So, on this technology readiness scale, so technology readiness level of like 1 or 2 it's on an optical bench in a lab. Technology level, readiness level 9 or 10 is like, that's a complete product that is ready to just be chucked out the window and still work when you bring it back in to the lab. So there are certain schemes that will only fund TRLs from like 5 or 6 up to 8 or 9. And so for those types of schemes, then there's a heavy emphasis on the commercialization aspects. Mm-hmm. So I think the biggest difference is, if I take the example of European funding schemes, you have an excellence section, which is the scientific background, what is novel about your technology or your innovation. Then the impact section, which more for the scientific aspects is this going to produce leading papers? Is this going to produce something that is revolutionizing the field? Whereas for the industry side of things, that impact section is, what's the impact that's going to have on the company? Are you going to sell things? If so, what are your sales projections? All of those things need to go into that impact section. And then the implementation section, which is the last section, which is the Gantt chart and your project plan, your work package structure, that is by and large the same. I could say perhaps in a lot of the industry-focused schemes, the timeframes are a bit shorter because the company's also investing a certain amount of money of their own resources into the project. And so when you do that, you want to see a relatively rapid return on your own investment. So I'd say the biggest difference is the impact section. That's basically the flavor of the impact. Is the impact going to be, groundbreaking research, blue-sky research or whatever, where it's resulting in Nature papers or whatever, or is it going to generate revenue for the company?
Yeah.
We have another question in the streaming. There are grants for people from South America here in Spain.
It is only for South American researchers, that's for Fundación Carolina, but Marie schemes will fund researchers from South America and also
Mm-hmm. Do you have more questions? No?
No? Maybe we can end with this.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So thank you so much. I mean, both of you, maybe we can.
So if you want to stay in the picture, you go there. If there's no picture, never happens. So please.
¿Esto qué? ¿Lo cerramos ya?
Vale, sí, desconéctalo, ya está.
Y adiós.